She said it with a smirk. Not cruel. Not angry. Worse, like I did not matter. Oh, he is just here. Like I was a coat rack. A footnote. Background noise to her clean, shiny climb. We were jammed into the middle of their glass and marble mausoleum of a housewarming party. Her new firm had just moved their regional headquarters into this showpiece. Her new boss, the guy with hair frozen in place and a permanent smirk, had wrapped up a speech about vision and velocity. Investors drifted around with wine that probably cost more than my suit. One of them, a real estate guy with a Rolex tan, pointed at me and asked Ashley, "Is this your husband?" She laughed loud and tossed it off. "Oh, he is just here." Right there, our marriage turned into a punchline. I did not crack a smile. I did not blink. I set my glass down, nodded like I was headed to the restroom, and slipped out the sliding doors into the night. The lawn lights were those little solar lamps. From inside, I could still hear Ashley saying something about synergy. Her perfume hung in the cool air. I pulled out my phone. One number. No hesitation. "It is time," I said. My attorney, Jason Reed, picked up. Time for what? Cancel the acquisition. Conflict of interest. Silence. The kind where a lawyer runs numbers in his head and tries not to sound excited. Then Jason cleared his throat. Clause 14-B. Clause 14-B, I said. Hold up a second. If you are still listening, maybe you are scrolling on your lunch break, or you have this playing while you drive. More than 90% of you never follow. I get it. But it helps the team when you hit subscribe. We work hard to make stories like this. If you are here, stay with me. Now, back to the patio. I ended the call with 2 words. Make noise. I stood there, watching my breath fog, looking at the gap between their overfunded swagger and the side hit that was about to land. The company Ashley had joined, grinning, cheering, showing off, was 2 weeks from sealing their crown jewel deal, a logistics optimization platform that would overhaul their entire back end. It would automate dispatch, cut losses, forecast fuel costs down to the hour. It was the platform I had built, the one I licensed under strict transfer rules. And now that same platform was frozen solid because my wife, eager to climb faster, forgot that ladders only work when someone holds them steady. I walked back to the window. Nobody noticed I was gone. Ashley laughed again. Her hand brushed her boss's sleeve. Trent Lawson. He smiled. Too close. Too familiar. It hit me in one clean shot. Not just the insult. Not just the disrespect. The show. She had rewritten her life, and I was not a chapter anymore. I was a footnote. An uncredited cameo. Fine. Let them raise a glass to their coming dominance. Let her smirk through a story about building from nothing. I was done reacting. No more arguing. Only choices now. Cold, legal, final. I headed for the car. While she toasted synergy inside, I pulled the pin on clause 14-B outside. By morning, she would not be laughing. By Monday, their acquisition team would be in a full panic. And the next time someone asked, "Who is he?" the answer would not go down easy. 10 years back, I was sleeping 4 hours a night and eating whatever did not need a plate. Ashley was in school, working on a second degree in another state. I was knee-deep in warehouse data, building something I did not even understand the value of yet. I did not have a team. I had a beat-up laptop with a cracked hinge and a whiteboard full of overlapping arrows. What I built did not look flashy. It had no catchy name, but it worked. It made mid-sized logistics companies run like Amazon. Inventory balancing, dispatch routing, fuel efficiency curves. Boring to most people, but not to the ones bleeding cash and freight. The software made choices using real-world variables, load weight, driver fatigue, regional traffic patterns, even weather projections. Not pretty, just brutally efficient. Then I sold it quietly, licensing rights only. I kept ownership through a limited liability company I created for one reason: to protect the intellectual property and its revenue terms. Clause 14-B. The clause everybody tries to wiggle around. It made the license non-transferable if there was any direct connection between my limited liability company and any employee, executive, or consultant of the buyer. I wrote that clause during a sleepless stretch of paranoia. I never thought I would use it. Ashley never asked where the money came from. Not once. She just celebrated the day Sally Mae stopped calling and posted a brunch selfie, holding a mimosa with a caption that said, "Master of Business Administration, here I come," complete with a line about a shiny briefcase. I remember sitting across from her, The sunglasses made her look like someone I did not know yet. That money came from the first licensing deal, a 5-year term with a Chicago-based regional hauler. The second deal covered our down payment on the house. The third deal paid her tuition in full. And still, she never once asked why I never complained about costs. It did not bother me back then. I was proud. I wanted her to climb. But now she works for a firm that spent 6 months hammering out an acquisition they think is spotless. I watched their keynote 2 weeks ago. The chief executive officer talked about smart back-end pivots and proprietary routing technology that would soon be the industry standard. They flashed a roadmap slide, my roadmap, color-coded and lifted straight from a white paper I wrote 7 years ago. And she had joined their product team last month, just in time to get assigned to the integration rollout. Imagine that. Of course, nobody in that room knows who actually holds the licensing rights. They do not know about the clause. They do not know that under Delaware law, any conflict not disclosed before due diligence wipes out a pending agreement and can trigger personal liability if money is lost after implementation. But I know. My attorney knows. And now, thanks to that one casual laugh at the party, the clause that has collected dust for years is about to swing like a wrecking ball. I spent the next morning digging through our files, original license terms, amendments, automatic renewals, email threads, the limited liability company's profit and loss statements. All there. Quiet, boring proof of ownership. She never saw any of it. She was too busy performing a newer, shinier version of herself. I do not want to burn her life down. That would mean I still felt something. This is not revenge. This is correction. I let her build a tower on my foundation. She forgot to check who still held the deed. Let her boss make big speeches. Let her sparkle in team meetings. They are all standing on architecture I designed. And if they do not step back, Clause 14-B will turn their 6-month victory lap into a public mess in 6 hours. The wild part? They still do not even know my name. Monday morning, the conference room smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner. Oddly comforting, considering we were about to set off a charge under an 8-figure deal. Jason Reed sat across from me, sleeves rolled, glasses low on his nose, working through a stack of acquisition documents like a bloodhound with a law degree. His office was bare bones. No assistant, no fancy espresso setup, just a heavy bookshelf crammed with state codes and a little ceramic frog on the windowsill. He only smiled when a page bled. He tapped a sheet with his pen. There it is. Clause 14-B, third line. I leaned in. Words I had written years ago stared back in a faded courier font, a little warped from a bad scan. In plain English, it said something like this. If anyone tied to the buyer, an employee, an executive, an advisor, or an immediate relative, holds, currently holds, or is intended to hold any role connected to the licensor's product or how it is used, then the deal must be formally reevaluated before closing. If that tie is not disclosed, the agreement is void and the licensor keeps the right to pull back. Jason looked up, one eyebrow raised. Want to confirm again? Your wife started last Thursday? They announced it on LinkedIn, I said. Thrilled to welcome Ashley West, former product strategy consultant, now joining us as Director of Platform Development. He snorted. They always brag online before they check for landmines. I slid a folder across the table, her onboarding packet, the non-disclosure agreement, the employment contract, internal Slack screenshots. She was working with the integration team within 48 hours. She was even listed as a stakeholder on their Jira board. Jason let out a slow breath. So they made her a decision maker and a disclosure risk in the same week. Amateurs. And they think they are buying your code. He gave a small nod. Well, not anymore. He picked up his phone and called his paralegal, Megan Carter. Send the formal hold to Hayward and Company. Cite breach of Clause 14-B. Conflict of interest due to unreported spousal employment. Effective immediately. Request full retraction. Mark it urgent. I settled back in the chair, hands locked, pulse steady. This was the point of no return. Not just in the courts, but in my head. Once Jason hit send, the machine would start to grind. Lawyers would wake up in a sweat. Slack channels would get new names. Calendars would go dark. And her name, her public relations friendly, smiling name, would be the keyword that set it all in motion. You want me to break it to them gently? Jason asked. Or go for the throat? I did not hesitate. Go for the throat. We watched the email draft on the shared screen. Subject line, urgent, Breach of Clause 14-B. Immediate action required. The body was clean. No chest thumping. No threats. Just dates, documents, and the rule. At the bottom, a line I wrote nearly a decade ago. Retraction is considered formal upon digital receipt. Ownership remains with the licensor until a new agreement is approved. Jason pressed send. That was it. No fireworks. No shouting. But somewhere right then, an intern at Hayward & Company was staring at an alert that made no sense. A project manager was seeing a new calendar block called Acquisition Hold, Emergency Call, and a corner office executive was reading his phone with that slow, sour feeling that something had gone very, very wrong. Back in our quiet little office, Jason leaned back with a satisfied look. They will try to blame someone, he said. They will circle around until they pin it on her. And when they do, I said, they will ask why she never disclosed that her husband was the original architect. Which, Jason added, is going to read especially bad when her Slack messages throw your name around like you were some washed-up coder who lucked into a limited liability company. I let a slow smile settle in. It was never luck. He nodded. Domino 1. Now we wait. I was not planning to wait. I planned to walk into our house like nothing had happened. Sit through dinner while she told me all about onboarding drama and the new software politics. I would nod. Maybe pour her a glass of wine. Let her talk. Let her gloat. Because the trap was not just legal. It was personal. And the only thing better than watching them scramble would be knowing she would not see it coming until it was too late. She came home that night buzzing. Her heels clicked across the hardwood like applause. Her coat hung off one shoulder while she launched into a speech before the door even closed. You would not believe how fast they are moving, she said. They already looped me in on the rollout schedule. They said I had natural authority in the room. I stayed by the stove, stirring mushroom risotto, her favorite. I did not flinch. I did not smile. I ladled broth slowly and kept quiet. They're calling it Project Tusk, she said, settling on the kitchen island like she always did when she was in campaign mode. I know, terrible name, right? But the numbers are insane. The chief technology officer told me, off the record, this thing is projected to reduce operations costs by 38% within a year. 38, she said. That is hundreds of millions. She poured herself wine and did not ask if I wanted any. That had become normal. Small things that used to mean partnership now replaced by momentum. They have no idea what hit them, she said, smiling over the rim of her glass. They thought they were hiring a mid-level strategist. 1 week in, and I am already leading the implementation calls. I nodded. Smart move. She did not catch the tone. She did not hear the low hum under those 2 words. Smart move for me. Because earlier that day, while she dazzled half the company, my limited liability company's legal team sent a cease and desist notice to their back-end development vendor. Simple language. Very specific. All implementation, integration, or derivative use of the intellectual property known internally as Platform Tusk must be halted immediately, pending legal review of licensing compliance and third-party entanglement, as defined under Clause 14-B. I could have told her. I could have set the paper on the counter and watched her face go slack. But why? She did not even realize the contract her firm was leaning on was funded from our own bank account. She did not realize the man she had minimized in public had written the very engine she was trying to rebrand under their corporate banner. She was high on proximity and titles and LinkedIn buzz and little bursts of praise in internal Slack. The look in her eyes was the look of someone who believed she had finally left the old life behind. Me included. You okay? She asked, sliding off the counter and walking over. You are quiet. Long day, I said. She kissed my cheek like someone signing off an email. Not really present. Not really seeing me. You will laugh? She said, leaning against the refrigerator. But you remember that software you used to mess with, the route planner? Man, it is wild. The core engine of this whole project is nearly identical to what you built. I mean, they have refined it, obviously, but still. It is like déjà vu weird, right? I let a small smile show. Weird. She tossed that out like trivia. Like spotting my initials on a street sign. And that is when I knew I did not need to raise my voice or make threats. I did not need to expose her that night. She was already tangled in her own rope, talking faster, dreaming bigger, building a public persona that was about to split wide open. She did not ask what I had done that day. She did not ask much of anything anymore. Not about the limited liability company. Not about the code base. Not about the name I used in contracts. That was the real mistake. Not the smug grin. Not the ambition. Not even the way her hand lingered on her boss's sleeve. It was forgetting that silence is not emptiness. It is storage. I sat across from her at the table and handed her a plate. They will love you, I said. She smiled like she had already won. Across the city, in a different boardroom, a group of very nervous men were reading the cease and desist with pale faces, wondering how they had missed me altogether. The room was all glass and chrome, floor-to-ceiling windows, a polished table the size of a small yacht, bottled water lined up like trophies. She was not expecting the meeting. One minute she was drafting integration notes with her team. The next she was being asked, polite but firm, to step into conference. The big room, the one they use for shareholders and crises. She knew exactly what that meant. She tried to hide the shift in her shoulders as she walked in, tried to keep her heels clicking steady, her jaw loose. I did not sit in that room, but I can tell you exactly how it felt. I have the recordings, the calendar invites, the internal notes, and a blow-by-blow from a nervous project manager who called me later. The second she stepped through the door, the temperature dropped. The chief executive officer, Mark Bennett, was already at the head of the table, hands laced, mouth a hard line. To his right, the chief operating officer, Caleb Turner, spun a pen in slow, exact circles. Legal was there, too. Andrea Lopez, with a red folder and a face that said she had already drafted the exit memo. No one spoke. Her boss, Trent Lawson, came in last. He looked hollowed out, pale, like he had just identified a body. He held his phone away from himself like it was radioactive. "Close the door, please," Mark said. She closed it. Trent did not sit. He did not look at her. He set his phone on the table, tapped the screen, and turned the volume all the way up. A calm voice played through the speaker. "This is a formal notification of contractual breach under Clause 14-B, as defined in the 2015 licensing agreement filed by Sentinel Shelf Limited Liability Company, dated March 3rd. Any ongoing implementation or derivative planning related to the platform referenced internally as Tusk must cease immediately. Failure to comply will constitute grounds for legal action, including retroactive penalties under federal intellectual property law and state-level disclosure statutes." Clinical. Final. Then Mark asked the question that mattered. "Remind me what your husband does." She swallowed. "He used to run a small technology company. Nothing major. He sold it years ago." I did not think. Did he ever mention owning the intellectual property behind the software we just spent 6 months preparing to acquire? Her breath hitched. I did not know it was his." Trent finally met her eyes. His voice was flat. "The notice came from Sentinel Shelf. That is his company, is it not?" She hesitated. "Yes, I think so. But he has not touched that work in years. He is not involved in this." Caleb flicked the pen one more time. "You are listed as a stakeholder on the Tusk Integration Board. You approved back-end alignment with his legacy code last week." "I did not know it was his," she said, louder than she meant to. "No one said there was a connection. It read like routing logic optimization strings. There is no branding because he never sold it with branding." Andrea finally spoke. "We reviewed the original license. It was anonymized through limited liability company transfers, airtight identity shielding, but the math and the structure are his. Your name appears on 6 internal memos calling that implementation legacy adjacent, which is enough, legally, to show knowledge." She shook her head. "No, I did not think. He never told me." Mark rose slowly. "How long have you been married?" 8 years. "And in those 8 years, you never asked where the money for your degree came from?" Silence. Trent rubbed his forehead. "The project is frozen. Rollout is halted. Investors are already pinging. Legal will run a full compliance sweep, which means they will comb through every message you have sent the integration team and anything you have shared with him." Her voice came out small. "It was just dinner talk. I did not leak anything." "That is for us to determine," Andrea said. "Until the internal review is complete, do not discuss this with anyone. That includes your husband." That last word hit like a slap. The husband she had joked about, brushed off, called just here 2 days earlier. Now he was in their servers, their contracts, their risk models. One quiet call, and the glass had started to crack. She finally remembered what she had forgotten about me for years. I am not loud. I do not need to be. I just wait for the right stress line and press. At 8:14 in the morning, the press release posted, "Strategic acquisition suspended pending review due to unforeseen contractual complexities. Our integration of Platform Tusk will be temporarily paused while internal and legal assessments are conducted. We remain committed to operational excellence and transparency." Corporate language for, "We stepped on a landmine and someone is about to take the blame." She read it on her phone while she was still in bed. Thumb hovering. No blink. Just staring. Then the email alarms began. Subject: Urgent, Project Tusk hold. Subject: Emergency call, legal review. Subject: Regarding, did you know about this? She was brushing her teeth when Slack messages popped up. Short. Careful. But the edge was there. Hey, saw the public relations note. You good? You were leading implementation, right? Were you the one who onboarded the routing team? She did not answer. Not yet. She needed to get to the office and fix it in person. By the time she arrived, the glass walls that used to make her feel important made the place feel like a terrarium. She could see everyone. The air between them had changed. No waves. No quick smiles. Eyes dropped as she passed. Her badge still worked, but the lanyard suddenly felt heavier than it had 2 days earlier. Trent found her in the break room, tipping stale coffee into a paper cup she did not want. He did not soften it. "Why did you not disclose your connection?" he asked. She froze. "What? To the platform, to the intellectual property, to him?" She blurted. "I did not know it was his," she said too fast. "Jessica," Trent caught himself. "Ashley," he said quietly. "You signed a spouse disclosure form 2 weeks ago." I do not remember that." He pulled out his phone, tapped, and turned the screen toward her. A scanned document. Her signature at the bottom. Standard onboarding. Clause 5.6 clearly asks for any known family or spousal ties to vendors, partners, or entities tied to intellectual property under acquisition review. You marked none. Her stomach dropped. "I did not think it mattered," she said. "I did not know he still had anything to do with it. We have not talked about his work in years." He did not argue. He just watched her like a man seeing a sweater come apart, thread by thread. "The board is freezing your involvement in all internal projects," he said. "Effective immediately. You cannot be serious. Legal serious. Human resources serious. The investors are on fire, Ashley. We just sat through a valuation meeting based on a product we may not be legally allowed to touch. The only reason no one is saying fraud yet is because the review is still underway." "I did not do anything wrong," she said, trying to find the confident tone that used to sway a room. It came out thin, unsteady. "I did not know what he still had." "But you knew what he was," Trent said, and that landed like a knife. "You just did not think he mattered." He left her there, half a cup of coffee, full panic. By lunch, her calendar was empty. Project invitations revoked. Slack permissions quietly trimmed back. Her access to the Tusk integration board was gone. Every message thread that mentioned the platform wore a new label. Restricted, legal review only. She sat at her desk in a wide ring of silence. Last week's star had become a hot surface no one wanted to touch. Conversations went half-mute when she walked by. The intern who used to ask for her advice would not meet her eyes. The human resources director gave her a look she could not place, more pity than concern. And through it all, not one word from me. Not a call. Not a text. She did not even know where I was, and for the first time in our marriage, that scared her. She came through our front door like a storm after the lightning has burned out. No slam, just a tired shove. Keys missed the hook and clacked once on the wall before landing. Her bag hit the floor with a dull thud. She stood in the foyer a beat too long, like she was not sure she still lived here. I was in the kitchen with the French press in one hand and a ceramic mug in the other. Calm, measured. Morning light caught the steam on the counter like it was something holy. She saw me, and, for a second, her face folded into something I had not seen in years: fear. Not the noisy kind. The still kind. The kind that shows up when someone finally sees the line they stepped over and realizes it was not a suggestion. "What did you do?" she asked. I did not answer right away. I poured the coffee. I stirred in a little cinnamon. Habit. I took a sip. Then I looked at her without blinking. "You told him I was just here," I said. Another sip. "So I left." She glanced around the room like the walls might tell her I was bluffing. The rug she picked. The art she hung. The mahogany bookshelf she built one piece at a time. But the difference was not in the furniture. It sat on the table, a plain cream folder, the kind you find in a notary's office. My handwriting across the tab, asset transfers. Her hands did not move, but her eyes locked on it like it might go off. I do not understand, she said, voice fraying at the edges. You would not, I said. You never asked. She walked over slow, like it might vanish if she blinked. She opened the folder, read the first page, then the second, then went back to the first. Her breath caught. The house, the car, the investment accounts. My name, and only my name, beneath the trust's controlling entity. A legal restructuring, dated 3 months back, right around the time she started acting like she was auditioning for somebody else's life. You moved everything. Yes. Her hands shook. You cannot do that. I did. But my name is on the... It was, I said. Until it was not. The folder held notarized filings. She recognized my attorney's name. Jason Reed. The same man who helped us buy this place. The same man who walked me through Clause 14-B while she was out picking tile samples. I paid the down payment, she said, weak and reaching for ground that no longer existed. With money from a licensing deal you never asked about. That is not fair. Fair would have been honesty, I said, still calm. Fair would have been not pretending I was your shadow while you played visionary at dinner parties. I never said. You said it with your tone, with your timing, with every moment you called me just here in front of people you wanted to impress. She dropped into a chair, the same chair where she used to scroll job listings and decide which company would look best on the resume. What happens now? She whispered. That depends, I said. On what? On whether you are finally ready to admit whose name poured the concrete under your feet. She did not answer. She just stared at the folder like it had teeth. And in a way it did. Because it was not only paper. It was the first time she saw it in writing. The cost of treating me like a piece of furniture. The legal reality that shows up when you forget the quiet ones are still building while you are out performing. The house was not hers anymore. Not on paper. Not in her head. And now she understood. Silence is not an empty space. Sometimes it is a plan. By Wednesday, the calls slowed. Correction, some calls slowed. The ones from her boss, from human resources, from the internal review team. Those trickled and then stopped. No updates. No meetings. No invitation to the emergency all-hands video call where everyone but her got next steps. One call did come through. It hit harder than any memo. Her mother. I just read that article, her mother said. No greeting. No soft landing. Just impact. Which part? Ashley asked, pulling the blinds shut. That the software your company tried to buy belonged to your husband. That he filed some kind of legal block and now the deal is frozen. It is complicated, Ashley said. No, it is not, her mother snapped. You are married. He paid for your Master of Business Administration. I told you not to take advantage of him back then. Ashley stopped pacing. What are you talking about? Her mother let out a dry laugh. Please, Ashley. You expect me to believe you worked 2 jobs and still came out debt-free from Stanford? You think I did not notice the upgraded apartment, the nice dinners, the tuition disappearing? You never explained, and I stopped asking because I thought maybe, just maybe, you had finally found someone who stood behind you. Looks like he did. And you never even asked where the money came from. Ashley said nothing. You wanted a husband who stayed quiet and clapped on cue, her mother said. You had one. Until you did not. Then the click. Dial tone. The next hit was quieter. Her group chat, once full of inside jokes and photos of espresso martinis, went still. 3 unread messages, all from her. No replies. The last text from anyone else was 5 days back, before the housewarming party, when she posted a filtered elevator selfie with the caption, making moves, plus a little rocket ship. Now there was nothing. She opened Instagram. Notifications were down to a trickle. Someone had untagged her from a conference photo. A former coworker she once mentored posted a story from the team offsite in Lake Tahoe. Ashley had not been invited. They called it a logistics leadership retreat and did not pretend she was welcome. She scrolled more. Under one of the firm's posts, a well-known vendor had left a comment. While that a company like this did not vet acquisition risk, you would think someone would flag intellectual property conflicts early. There were no names. But in logistics, everybody knows everybody. The whisper networks are sharp. A developer she used to work with, Ben Carter, soft-spoken with a dry sense of humor, posted on social media that morning. Funny how the quiet engineers end up being the landmines. Respect the ones who keep building in the background. They own more than you think. It had more than 800 likes. She set her phone down and sat with the kind of silence that does not soothe, the kind that wraps around your throat. The email from legal sat unread. Subject line, compliance inquiry, access restrictions notice. She could not bring herself to open it. Even the walls of the house felt off. Too sterile, too staged. A museum of choices she made but never actually owned. Somewhere in that house, maybe in a box in the basement, maybe on an old hard drive in the attic, sat the code she used to laugh at. The one I wrote at 2 in the morning while she told me to take a break and do something normal. That same code had taken her job, her shine, and her credibility. Now none of her connections wrote back. She was alone. Not the kind you can hide with a filter. The plain kind. She dressed for the meeting in her best blouse, pressed twice. Pearl studs. Neutral heels. Silent. Professional. Forgettable. Exactly how human resources prefers it. The last time she entered the boardroom like that, it was her onboarding. Her boss made a joke about rising stars. Human resources said, "We expect big things." This time, no jokes. The long table ran out like a tribunal. Legal counsel at the far end. Human resources to one side. The chief operating officer on the other. Her boss was off to the left, no notebook in hand, eyes down. No one offered coffee. "Ashley," the lawyer began. "Thank you for coming in. This will not take long." No chit-chat. No cushions. Just the blade. "We are conducting a compliance review concerning your role in Project Tusk," the lawyer said. "Before we proceed, we need clarity on one question." Ashley nodded. Her jaw tightened. "Did you knowingly influence internal priorities, strategic or technical, while being aware that your spouse had historical or legal ownership ties to the intellectual property being acquired?" Ashley went still. "I did not know he still owned it," she said, slow and careful. "I was not in that room, but I have the transcript and the notes. I know the tone. I know the pauses. I know where the air went thin. We are married, but we have been financially separate for years," she said. "I have not seen any statements. I was not part of his limited liability company." "That is not what we asked," the human resources representative cut in, voice sharp enough to score glass. "We are asking whether, at any point, you were aware of his prior or ongoing connection to the underlying platform." Ashley glanced toward Trent. Nothing. No expression. Just the scratch of a pen. "He is a developer," she tried. "He tinkered. I assumed he had moved on. I never saw any contracts." "He never." Legal counsel stepped over her words. "You used the term legacy adjacent in multiple internal memos. That is not casual language. It is technical. It signals familiarity. I picked that up from vendor meetings." "Did your husband ever discuss licensing terms with you?" "No." "Are you certain?" "Yes." The lawyer tapped a tablet. A moment later, the human resources representative slid a printed page down the table. Highlighted lines. Slack bubbles. Ashley stared at her own sentences. "Let us fast-track this. The vendor is a non-issue. My husband is just a hobbyist who sold some code 1,000,000 years ago. Trust me, this is not conflict territory. He does not even know we are using it." Her chest tightened. She had forgotten those. She typed them fast during an evening sprint, trying to impress the chief technology officer, trying to keep the momentum hot. She never thought they would come back like this. The lawyer waited. "Do you consider those statements appropriate in light of what we now know?" I did not mean." "We know what you meant," Human Resources said, flat as a stamp. Trent finally spoke, voice quiet and empty of anything that could be called emotion. "We are voting to place you on indefinite administrative leave, effective immediately, pending the final audit." Ashley blinked. "That is it. We will update your access permissions within the hour," the Human Resources representative said. "You will receive a follow-up notice by the end of the day." No raised voices. No theatrics. Just process. She stood. No one looked up. Back at her desk, the badge still lit green, but barely. Access to the internal drive. Revoked. Calendar. Blank. Email. Disabled. The laptop screen blinked once and went dark. She watched herself reflected in the black glass. No tears. Only her own words echoing back at her. "He is just a hobbyist." The line that pulled her career apart, one Slack message at a time. She had tried to erase me with casual talk. The company returned the favor with clinical phrasing. The cardboard box on her desk was too small for everything she had carried into this place and far too large for what she was taking out. A few framed photos with smiles that looked cropped and false. A cracked mug that said "Boss Babe" in pink script. 2 pins she had lifted from the human resources desk without meaning to. The rest was digital, and the servers had already scrubbed it clean. She moved like a machine. No flourish. No speech. Just the soft rustle of resignation papers sliding into cardboard. No one said goodbye? Not really. A few eyes flicked up when she passed, then fell back to monitors like she was a contagion. I do not blame them. There is only so long you can stand beside a burning house without smelling like smoke. She turned the corner near the lobby and caught her reflection in the front window, floor-to-ceiling glass that once felt like openness and now felt like a one-way mirror into her own humiliation. Outside, I stood on the sidewalk with my hands in my coat pockets, shoulders square, head tilted the slightest bit, like I was watching a slow-motion derailment finally glide to a stop. I did not wave. I did not move. I waited. She froze. I had not called since that night in the kitchen. No texts. No gloating. Nothing. But she knew I would be here. She knew I would know the exact hour her world would shrink to a box and a badge. Footsteps behind her. Trent approached with his phone to his ear. She turned just enough to see it unfold. He was mid-sentence, nodding, brow knotted. Then he paused, the kind of pause that only happens when the voice on the other end says something too sharp to miss. He turned toward the glass. He saw me. Recognition rolled across his face like a wave. In that second he understood. The quiet, polite man his rising star had called just here was everywhere. The harmless +1 was the architect of the platform, the owner of the intellectual property, the reason their 6-month deal sat on blocks, the ghost behind every panicked investor call since Monday. His hand dropped slowly, phone still lit. Color drained from his face to the gray of wet concrete. Outside, I did not smirk. I did not gesture. I held his gaze. The silence between us cut deeper than any final speech. After a long, clean beat, I turned and walked away. Not fast, not triumphant, just finished. The glass held my afterimage a few seconds longer, then released it. She stood there with the cardboard box clutched in both hands, breath stuck high in her ribs, surrounded by a company that did not want her and a career she could not salvage. No scandal, no big headline. A quiet, devastating erasure. I never raised my voice. I did not have to. I built in silence. And then, with the same steady quiet, I let one clause and one look through the glass take everything back.